This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to talk about 7 reasons to dump Mara. Mara, of course, being the Bitcoin mining company. Reason number 1, Mara is an undesirable hybrid between a Bitcoin mining company and a Bitcoin treasury company. Mara is a little bit like MSTR, a little bit like Strategy, but with the added huge boat anchor of being attached to a really crappy business, namely Bitcoin mining, which is highly capital intensive with minuscule margins and crazy unpredictable cyclicality as we've seen over the past few years. If you want exposure to Bitcoin mining, you should probably just buy a much more well-run company, maybe like CleanSpark. If you want exposure to a Bitcoin treasury company, you should probably just buy MSTR instead. Mara is a little bit like MSTR's deformed, retarded twin. If you take MSTR and replace Saylor with your typical short-sighted, quarterly focused, Wall Street ass-kissing CEO, you end up with something like Mara. If you take MSTR and completely eliminate the MNAV premium, thus making it much more difficult to issue new shares and buy more BTC in a non-dilutive way, again, you end up with Mara. As Parker Lewis points out in this post, at first look it appears that Mara Holdings mines Bitcoin at a pretty substantial loss. A first-year analyst might add back depreciation and amortization, but anyone that understands finance or Bitcoin mining knows it doesn't work that way. Love the JPEG cheerleaders, though. And he points out here, for example, the year ended December 31st, 2024. Revenues from mining and hosting services were $656 million. Cost of those revenues was $815 million. Obviously, you have depreciation and amortization here, but these are basically mining rigs that need to be constantly replaced. So there is a real cost there, and you can see it when you look at their free cash flow statement as well. Reason number 2 to dump Mara. Mara's management team lacks focus. Instead of focusing solely on Bitcoin mining, which is already one of the toughest businesses in the world, Mara is constantly dabbling in side gigs that make no sense, like, for example, mining the cryptocurrency Caspa. And here's the question: why in the world, when you own so many ASICs, Bitcoin mining rigs, which can only be used for one thing, they can only be used for SHA-256 hashes, why in the world, when you own so many of these ASICs that are only good for one thing, why would you be trying to support a completely different blockchain or block DAG in the case of Caspa that, if it succeeded, would completely wipe out the value of your ASICs? They're basically going against their own interests. And that's why I assert that CEO Fred Thiel has the vision of a turnip. The best Bitcoin mining companies are 110% focused on Bitcoin mining. It's funny how that works, isn't it? Focusing on ASIC and software optimization, as well as focused on securing new low-cost energy sources. Now imagine how any competitive advantage evaporates if you're also focused on Caspa mining and building software for direct submission projects like Slipstream, which don't even contribute meaningfully to revenue growth. If you're finding this video helpful so far, I would pause right here very briefly to just ask you to help to support this channel's educational mission. Hit the subscribe button, that does really help. Leave a like, leave a comment, question, suggestion for a future video, and share this video with a friend or family member. Reason number 3 to dump Mara. Not surprisingly, the market is already rightly valuing Mara's core operating business as close to worthless. Right now, Bitcoin has rallied a bit over a 3-day weekend, so it's now showing the value of the Bitcoin holdings of the company being slightly above the market cap. So 5.29 billion for their Bitcoin holdings versus a $5.2 billion market cap. When I looked at this Friday after the close, basically the market was valuing Mara without its Bitcoin at something like $50 million or something like that. So it's basically the market is valuing its operating business as zero. And that's a really big problem. Reason number 4, it's a really big problem because if Mara's Bitcoin custodians get hacked or go under, all that's left to Mara is a worthless operating business. Worthless because that's how Wall Street's currently valuing it. All that's left is this operating business. And then they have $196 million in cash on the balance sheet, a few $100 million worth of rapidly depreciating mining rigs, and then here's the kicker, and this is why it's going to be very difficult to be an equity holder in this company, $2.64 billion in debt that's been used mostly just to buy that Bitcoin. I would say if you want Bitcoin exposure, I would suggest there are much better ways of getting it with much less downside risk. And then to make matters worse, about 15% or 7,377 Bitcoin, about 15% of Mara's total Bitcoin holdings have been loaned out and possibly rehypothecated. That's another $800 million that could vaporize overnight. If we take a look at their 10K that was published March 3rd, 2025, as of December 31st, 2024, we had approximately 7,377 Bitcoin loaned to third parties, generating yield from our loan Bitcoin, and approximately 2,997 Bitcoin utilized as collateral for our borrowing. So they really aren't holding any of their own Bitcoin. It's at custodians, and it's also being lent out. If we take a look at how they've achieved holding so much Bitcoin, we can see basically their debt from December of 2023, when it was only 326 million worth of debt, which is still substantial for a company its size. Its debt moved up in 2024 to 2.473 billion. So that's how they were able to finance this. They were able just to borrow the money. Number 5 reason to dump Mara: as Bitcoin mining becomes increasingly decentralized, thanks to startups like Ocean Mining, demand for products like Mara Slipstream will evaporate. This is not a new growth product. This is basically something that's going to end up being a complete waste of time for Mara. And that will happen. Demand for products like Slipstream, this direct submission service, will evaporate at the same time that Mara is losing hash rate market share. Mara is already an unprofitable Bitcoin mining company. So just imagine what happens as their competition heats up. And this is becoming increasingly apparent in Mara's operating results. The most recent report from May 5th, talking about April of 2025. In April, our production saw a 15% month-over-month decrease in blocks won, as global hash rate had its second largest monthly gain on record. It's also funny to take a look at this when they talk about themselves, how they define Mara: a vertically integrated digital energy and infrastructure company that leverages high-intensity compute, such as Bitcoin mining, to monetize excess energy and optimize power management, etc., etc. That's a far cry from how they used to define themselves back in 2021. They call themselves one of the largest enterprise Bitcoin self-mining companies in North America. So they seem very uncomfortable in their own skin. It may just be because their Bitcoin mining has been going so poorly that they're seeking other lines of business like lining Caspa. And if we look at Mara's homepage right now, you would never guess this is a Bitcoin mining company, even though that's where all their money comes from, or most of their losses, I should say. Leveraging digital asset compute to support the energy transformation, whatever that means. I guess it means they're trying to get more solar panels put up in beautiful natural places. If we take a look at their website back from 2023, setting the pace for the Bitcoin mining industry. Obviously, this was before they started mining Caspa and doing stuff like that. So maybe that's the way you set the pace. Doesn't make any sense to me. Reason number 6 to dump Mara. Mara is a bad actor in the Bitcoin space, and a poor steward of the Bitcoin blockchain. As we talked about or alluded to, Mara's direct submission product, Slipstream, seeks to subvert the normal functioning of the Bitcoin network by bypassing Bitcoin nodes, which are at the heart of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And as a result of this, as a result of their behavior over the past few years, including trying to mine only OFAC compliant blocks, as a result, Mara is widely disliked by the wider Bitcoin community, apart, of course, from bad actors who profit from Mara's role in helping to put spam on the Bitcoin blockchain. If you want to dig a little deeper into this whole problem, which is rising to the forefront in Bitcoin debate circles, answering common Bitcoin spam questions, I'll link to this video, as well as Satoshi's secret cure for spam, as well as this video, Bitcoin culture has always been anti-spam, in case you're not familiar with the spam debate that's going on. Finally, reason number 7 to dump Mara. You should dump it because that's what the insiders are doing. There's only insider selling. There's no insider buying, as far as I can tell. If we take a look at insider activity here, at first it looks optimistic. Lots of open market buys and just a few sells. Number of shares bought exceeding the number of shares sold. But when you look into it, all you see is sales, disposition, non-open market, automatic sell, etc. And when you do see an acquisition, it looks like it's basically just an executive exercising their stock options. And you can tell that because the purchase price of these shares is 0. So I would encourage you, if you are able to accumulate Mara shares at a cost basis of 0, it might make some sense, because at least for now, until that big debt load comes due and they don't have the free cash flow to pay it off and no one wants to lend them anything to roll the debt, at least for now, the stock is worth more than 0. And this is the price that Fred Thiel has been accumulating, of course. And this is what CEOs do, and they deserve the upside, of course. But as I hope you've seen from this video, Fred is doing a terrible job. And insiders are dumping because they're not bullish on the company. So if you're going to buy Mara stock, if you own Mara stock, you should ask yourself if you're feeling lucky, do you understand Mara's future prospects better than insiders? Are you comfortable buying while insiders keep selling? And also you ask yourself, is there a good reason that you own Mara instead of something like MSTR, or better yet, real Bitcoin? Why in the world would you have something like Mara in your portfolio? It makes absolutely no sense. Happy Memorial Day to all, especially in the U.S. Never forget the bravery and dedication of those who gave their lives for our freedoms. And I also want to thank President Trump for so far not starting another forever war like so many of his predecessors have done. I hope this will finally be the presidency and the administration where we're able to put the neocons and the forever wars and the military-industrial complex behind us. I'm not super optimistic, but I am optimistic, and I'm grateful that we haven't entered into a war yet in the first few months of President Trump's administration. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video, and let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.